Greetings, techies, sound guys, students, engineers. My name's Dean Horler. I have a company called Lucas Miles Audio. We're based down in Mentone at the moment, not far from where we are at the moment, which is Salt Studios in East Brighton, Victoria. Now, my business is mainly associated with building lovely little tube guitar amps, but every now and again we take on the odd side project which is more about tweaking or modding or upgrading audio equipment, whether it be sort of studio gear or hi-fi gear, and the endeavour is to upgrade it up to sort of high-end sort of status, once again to chase that sound, which we all love to do. So here we are in Salt Studios, and one of our little side projects that we've taken over the last year or so is sitting right behind me. It's this Amek Hendrix console, which Salt Studios bought a few years back. It's a 1992 model, so it's 26 years old, and of course consoles don't last forever. They get noisy pots, bad switches, and so forth. So it was in desperate need of a refurbishment. If we look at the console, we've got 24 strips here, the 24 channels. Number one's been pulled out for the time being because that's got to be our demo channel, which we've got to show you shortly. We've got your submasters here. These are stereo subs, so it's an 8-bus sub. We've got the master section here. We've also got matrix and things. This was initially had what they called the Super True automation, which was like one of the very early automation sort of desks. It's got memory chips loaded on board. It was probably this console might have come out of a film production house or something, but we have no endeavour to do anything with the automation thing. That's totally obsolete. We're just not interested in here. And here we have a piece of wood, which is where there were the other 16 channels. It's a 40 channel desk. The other 16 channels have been pulled for the time being. They might get refurbished, they might not, but we're here. Our job was mainly to concentrate on these 24 strips because we want to use it as a tracking desk, 24 in, 24 out, and later on use it as a mixdown console as well. Now, of course, they're quite a good desk to refurbish, and they're not a bad investment because we can tweak them right up. In their day, this console, when it landed in Queensland somewhere. Look, these were like 200 grand plus. They're built like a battleship. They're fully modular, so they're easy to service. And the beauty is, for someone like me doing a refurbishment, the parts are readily available from a company in England called Audio Maintenance, who obviously have an affiliation with Amek, because we can get all the exact pots, all the switches, and so forth. So look, let's have a look at the strip. I've got a strip here out of the blue, and we'll just run down what's on each of these strips, how they're sort of laid out. We have at the top here, we've got our bus outs. It's switchable 12 to 24, so we can get up to 24 bus outs, which is pretty cool. Blah blah blah. Auxiliary stands, I think there's about 8 auxiliaries. They're all switchable. Here we have our little mic pre-section, tape return, low and high pass filters, our EQ section, top end, high mids, low mids, bottom end. Then we have our little monitoring section here, and our pans, and up to our faders, and that. As you can see, it's a very compact strip. Beautifully laid out, easy to service. Now the idea was, like, if you did a stock refurbishment, that these, yeah, look, you got to do the switches, change the pots, and then go through and do all the caps, do all the recapping. We take it a bit further than that because we can. Now the original designer, Graham Langley, who designed this desk with help from Rupert Neve, who was at the company for about 1989 and oversaw most of the Amek products which were being pumped out. They designed a new mic pre. So apart from just doing a stock refurbishment, we're going to upgrade the mic pre's. We're going to do that, which will sit in here. Then we'll go through and do upgrades to a lot of these gain stages, the op amps. We're going to tart those right up, and that should kick it right into sort of quite a beautiful sounding desk. So we'll put this one to the side, and we'll show you one of the channels stripped down and how they're how we go about it. Okay, so this is the channel stripped down. We take all the knobs off, blah blah blah, then the fascia pulls off, and here's your strip. Yeah, and look at this, opens up like that, bit of a butterfly strip, so you can get in there. You can see what we've done. We upgraded all the caps, all the switches that have been done, pots. I think there's about 70 or 80 of these red things which needed to be done. They're the capacitors. They tire out over time. You lose dynamics, you lose a lot of top end, and the bottom end becomes probably woolly, so they need to be changed. And we did the pots. Now we're talking about the upgrading the mic pre section. Okay, so before, if you had a look at the other strip, the mic pre was based around a chip, which is that one there. That's the original mic pre chip. It's an SS2016. It was a chip. That's the mic pre. It's probably pretty advanced in its day, but things have come a long way since then. So now we talked about upgrading the mic pre. The mic pre upgrade for these channel strips comes in the form of a board. You can see this little satellite board here. It's a discrete mic pre. You can see the little trannies there. They're probably biased into Class A. Now what we had to do was go through here and pull out all the components associated with the old mic pre and just plonk this board in, bit of soldering at the back, and we've got ourselves a very high-end mic pre. Now we've done, of course we do shootouts, a lot of shootouts around here, A/B tests with other mic pre's. Now at the back here we've got some Neve 1073s, we've also got some really nice Chandler mic pre's. So we've gone through and done all our A/B testing, and this baby's probably the pick of the bunch actually. A lot of the engineers prefer to use this when they come into the studio. They use the pre's on the desk, so we're quite happy about that. Okay, so that was upgrading the mic pre's. Now as I said before, we talked about doing the sonic upgrades. Coming through here, you know, upgrading these op amps. Now remember, this is 1992. The op amps in here you'll find were like your stock op amps at the time, which they still use these days in a lot of pro audio gear. Your TLO 72s or your 5532s. They're all pretty generic sort of op amps. If people don't know what an op amp is a little gain stage, like an amplifier, or like what a transistor used to do, or what a valve used to do. Here we have our little op amps. These are little 8-pin jiggy jigs. Inside there's a lot of little transistors and resistors. Yeah. And of course over the years there's better ones on the market. But the thing is, like we talked about the 5532s or the TLO 72s, in these units. They're still being used very much. You know, they offer a level of performance which is good for audio. Is it high end? No, it's not high end. It's sort of you'll find these sort of op amps still being used in probably about 90% of the pro audio gear that's on the market today. We're talking like the Behringers or the Mackeys and all that sort of gear. These are what we call like jelly bean op amps. They can cost you probably 20 cents, 40 cents or 50 cents. In the world of mass production, they're a good op amp to use. You do get a good level of performance, but is it high end? No, it's nowhere near high end. So we go through and we're going to change these op amps. Here we have like the filter stages. That's the high and low pass filter. The signal, the way the signal runs down through the channel, it comes through your mic pre, hits the mic pre, then will run down. If you want to run through your filters, high and low pass filters will run down through there. If you want to kick in the EQ, or run down through the EQ, down to the fader and out. In mix down mode, once again, same sort of thing. You got your line input coming in and your tape return will run through the pre at a line level, through your filters, through your EQ stages, out through your fader and off to your master. So we've gone in and we've there's probably about 3 or 4 of the op amps that we tested and A/B'd with the stock channels. Some of those op amps that we use for your techies out there who want to know, they were like the 49720s, the 8599s, the 16112s. So we went through and we put them in these stages, but the icing on the cake are these buggers here. And I'll probably give you a close-up of these a bit later on. These are what we call the discrete op amps. These are like a fairly new development, probably over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. These units have come to the fore. This is what they call a discrete Class A op amp. This one's a dual, it's got 2 layers. This is compared, it's got the same sort of footprint, like 8-bit sort of footprint as these op amps have here. So you can substitute these in your best places in the console, in the strip. Now these are like I said, these are the Class A bias, a little host of little transistors on board. Probably a bit more going on these than what's going on in these chips. And the beauty is, like, these are what are they on the market for? These are about $70 US a piece. Where if we go back to our generic op amps, they're about 40 cents each. Our sort of more upmarket op amps, which you've used, range from probably about $5 to about $10. So the placement of these, we've got 2 here. Now we talked about the signal coming down through the mic preboard, through the filters, down through the EQ. On this particular desk, it splits when it hits the EQ stage. It goes via the top end down to the bass, and the mids go on another journey. So it goes top end to bass, then it goes mids. At the final end, it sums, and the final stages are these 2 op amps here. So we've decided we've got to put these snazzy, these Class A op amps at these final stages, and we'll talk about what sort of sound we get with these in a minute. But this sort of format is very similar to something like an SSL console. The SSLs have the same sort of format. They use the op amps coming down through the EQ stage, op amps in the filter stages, and in the final stage before it hits your fader, they have a Class A discrete stage, and that's about as good as you can get. The Class A stages you'll find in a lot of sort of processors, audio processors. For instance, like the DBX, the vintage 160s, they have a Class A discrete output stage. They're a very good sounding unit. The 1176 compressors, which I can see in the rack behind me, they have the same sort of Class A discrete output stage. It's a lot better than having a couple of op amps on the output. Yeah, so look, if you want to do a bit of research on that sort of stuff, looking at output stages, if you're out there in the marketplace looking at buying sort of processors and things, you probably find the better upmarket ones will have like a Class A discrete output stage. You'll also might find the upmarket ones, the sort of ones that get all the marketing, will have op amp outputs. You know, and the only way to sort of, you know, rather than just read the reviews and stuff, the only way you can sort of gauge whether a bit of gear's good or bad, it's using these things. So let's talk about the sound. So the sound of these strips with what we've done. So look, we're when we test out these strips, we generally we use drums. I prefer to use drums, you know, kick, snare, and a pair of overheads. We generally rack them up, bring it down like 4 channels, kick, snare, and a pair of overheads. So, and then we compare. We listen to the upgraded strips, and then we listen. We also have 4 of these, which are still pretty much stock, so we can A, B, and so forth. The comparison is like if you run a kick down through one of our upgraded sort of strips, the difference is now, it's quite remarkable because there's a lot more headroom and punch coming out of our new mic tree for starters. You know, it's a lot cleaner, a lot more punchy, a lot more dynamic, a lot more headroom. With the kick, what you actually hear now is you can actually hear the beater, you know, smacking the skin. You can hear the actual the impact. You can hear the note the kick is making. It's a lot more defined, a lot more detailed, a lot more punchy, a lot more dynamic. It's just way better. Before, the kick was like a blur, you know, it's just a bit blurry. It had a sound, but it was just a blur. Now you can actually hear the definition of the kick, and then you can tweak your EQ a lot finer. With the snare, it's the same with the snare. When you hit, should be on this hand. When you crack the snare, it's the same effect. You can hear the crack a lot better. You hear the tone of the snare. You can hear just sort of the ring of the snare a lot better. It's a lot better defined, a lot better detailed. Probably the best is a pair of overheads. When we listen to the overheads, the cymbals. This is where you hear the top end. The top end is a lot more detailed now. You can hear the cymbals, you know, they're shimmering, but you can also hear them decay off. You know, before they just decayed and they were lost, but now you can hear them just decay beautifully off into the distance. So we put them all up. We put the kick, snare, and the overheads up. And what have we got? We got now. We got like a kit, which is we got the sound stage. The sound stage, it's like the blacks are blacker, the whites are whiter. We got the depth. You know, you start picking out the instruments at different times. You know, you can start picking them out. It's just the mods that we've done, the upgrades that we've done. It's just opened the whole sound gamut right up now. It's quite remarkable. Yeah, it's been totally worthwhile. And where's this baby sit? Well, in terms of quality, well, she's right up there now. It's been pulled from a sort of well, she's just got life. She's been given a second life, and she's going to produce many good recordings. I have no doubt. She's sounding wonderful. So I think that's about all I can tell you about this baby. I just put this back over here. As an investment, or like I said, you can pick these babies up fairly cheap these days because no one actually wants them. You probably need a bit of tech know-how to get it up to scratch. But if you want something that is probably has the capabilities and the sonic qualities of something like an SSL or better, she's the one. She's a babe. So yeah, that's it for me. Over and out. I hope you enjoyed this talk. If you want to catch up on any of the other things I do, tweak some mods, just go to my website, which is lucasmiles.com.au, and you should be able to head across to our Facebook page, and you'll see all the little tricks and treats I get up to. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye. All right,
It was good that you